Hey everyone, welcome back to the Franchise Unfiltered podcast for you. Got a special treat today, introducing a newer friend of mine and now partner in this newest venture that we're going to talk a little bit about today, John Palumbo. John, welcome, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to have this conversation because I've been intrigued with what you've kind of spent the last 10 years or so of your career doing, which is kind of evolved into now what you call internal podcasts. So we got connected through a mutual acquaintance, both live right in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. So met for coffee. And I can remember leaving that coffee meeting and just my wheels were turning because this concept of internal podcasts wasn't on my radar at all. I didn't know companies were doing this, obviously familiar with podcasts, but not for internal communication purposes within one organization. So do you want to kind of give the audience a little bit more of an overview of, what you mean when you talk about internal podcasts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of my company for years, I started this company in 2006 and around 2017, and it was always conversation based. It was always working with companies and helping them, I always said, have the conversations they should be having, but they're not. Yeah. And around 2017, podcasts were starting to emerge. But I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is a really efficient way to kind of have these conversations and share them. Of course, a lot of the conversations that we were having were confidential. So, right. I basically just kind of made it up. I was like, let's do a podcast series and we'll bring in the guests and we'll keep them limited. So we might take a very specific objective with an innovation team or a learning and development team and whatever that was. And I would put together, 4, 5, 6, up to 10 episodes and say, here's who we're going to talk to. Here's why we're talking to them. And then we're going to release them only to the team. Right. And it was something that, the companies loved it. It was, because it was a really efficient way to communicate. But at the same time, it got people involved because people would listen to it. They could listen to it anywhere. So you're talking about employees now who are listening to these things during their commute, if they're working out, whatever. And I always said to people, I'm like, we got to make them podcasty. They have to be good. They have to be entertaining. This can't be your newsletter turned into a podcast, So, and we would release them. And then a big part of it was that comment section and getting everybody involved. And people wanted to get involved because in a lot of cases, this was maybe myself and the leader of their team talking to people. And the leader always prompting them, hey, leave a comment, get involved and whatever. And of course, you have to be crazy not to do it. So internal podcasting, I just kind of made it up. It's a thing now. It is pretty much everywhere. People are, I'm now struggling with the fact that a lot of companies that I go to will be like, we do that already, or no, that didn't work for us, or, whatever it is. But it's pretty popular now.
More of a thing, but like I said, it wasn't on my radar. And I've been doing my podcast for 5.5 years now. So, I'm not like the world's leading expert on podcasts by any stretch, but like, I'm not a stranger to the whole podcast industry. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, and I should have prefaced this, your company, Big Heads Network, is your company. What types of companies have you done this with in the past? Because it blew my mind when, I heard about some of the companies you've worked with. Big companies.
Yeah. I kind of grew up in the marketing and innovation world. And I always, I was working at agencies where we were working with big companies. So that's always been my thing. That's just who I know. So I've done internal shows for American Express, for PepsiCo, we do a lot of them for Harman, for Keurig. The Corn Ferry, the list goes on and on by pretty large companies. And depending on what door I go in through will, kind of depend on who I work with. So American Express, I work with a lot of the sales teams. Harman, their Harman University, which is their leadership development. I also did a lot of work with their marketing folks. So it really all depends. Even PepsiCo, it was, when you talk about this and you think internal or private, people think it's just for employees, but it could be for any audience that you want to lock down and communicate with. So for Keurig, we've done them for customers. We've done them for their distributor network. And, even for PepsiCo, we did them for candidates to work. They went to very specific colleges, and instead of going on the college and doing the typical PowerPoint, we were releasing podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. Which sets you apart. Well, and I mean, that's what kind of, led us to continue talking about this and ultimately deciding to partner up. Cause, as you're telling me about some of this, and I'm telling you about, what I do in the franchise world. And, my wife and I own our local franchise, and I'm, work with hundreds of franchise brands across all these different industries. I'm like, dude, this is something that every single franchisor out there struggles with, which is, good communication within their organization. So that's franchisor to franchisee, franchisee to franchisee, and then, even candidate facing, which is prospective franchisees. And, it's not that most franchisors out there are not actively trying to communicate. They're just doing it in a way that's kind of stale and not getting a ton of adoption or interaction. So it's, recorded Zoom meetings, it's email newsletters, it's, a Facebook group that, isn't really that active or monitored. I mean, it's just, it's not getting the results. It's not moving the needle. So as I'm starting to hear you, tell me more about this, like, I mean, my wheels were just turning, and I kind of was like, man, do you know like how many franchise companies are out there that we could go and take this to? So, I mean, that's what kind of led to us deciding to partner up and bring this to the franchising space. So your company is Big Heads Network, but we're doing a kind of a side venture from that. What are we calling that?
I personally, I like the Studio F approach. I know you've heard some things that you always have to put Fran in things or whatever.
I like Studio F production. So don't be alarmed if you listen to this a year from now and maybe it's something different. But we've kicked around a few different ideas, but no, I've always thought it was hilarious that in the franchise industry, there's so many like supplier service vendor type companies that serve the franchising industry, and they all have Fran in front of whatever the name is, right?
Insert service here.
Yeah. So like someone told me, they're like, oh, you should call it Fran-pod.
When you told me that, I was like, you know what? We'll worry about the name later.
Yeah. John went Jersey on me when I said Fran-pod. He was like, the fuck, man, why we're not going to call it that.
We could curse on here.
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
good. Listen, that's one of the things. I work with corporate folks. So whenever I'm always like, oh, I gotta watch my.
The other reason I like Studio F Productions, because you can kind of just leave it open ended. You can let people get creative. With
their imagination runs wild. Yeah. And I'll tell you, franchise. When we talked about it, I had said to you, I had always looked at working with franchises. I worked with Domino's a long time ago, but it was corporate and it was their innovation team. And it wasn't to do podcasts, but that's really one of the only companies I've worked with that has a franchise system. But I've always looked at it and said, God, I would love to. Like, this just seems so ripe for franchisees. And to your point, it really is. It's one of those ways. I'm a big believer in conversational learning. Yes. I believe that. And I think a lot of people, that's why people listen to podcasts, conversations, whether you're in them or just listening to them, you absorb it. I mean, there's a lot of research on that, but when you're in them, in the conversation, you're learning even more. But these are it's a great way to even complement some of the things that you're doing. So if you have the newsletter or you have the announcement or you have the new whatever it is, the guidelines, in the franchise case, this is a great complement or supplement for that. And it really does. People do engage with it, especially if it's done right. It has to be done in a way that it's got to be a podcast.
It's got to be done right. It's got to be, easy to access, easy to find.
And entertaining. It's got to be fucking entertaining. That's what drives me crazy is that, and remember, I work with big companies. So you can imagine what they try to do. And in most cases, and I'll say to them, I'm like, I'm not fucking doing this. I'm like, I am not, you got to let me name it. You got to let me get the guests for it. And even if they're internal guests, I always say to people, I'm like, loosen up. This is your opportunity to, everybody talks about human leadership or this or that. This is your opportunity to loosen up, be yourself, have a little fun, and use your authentic voice. But we got to make this entertaining, or else it's going to get the low engagement just like everything else.
Yeah, totally agree. And I don't think it needs to be a replacement to the other things, but like as you and I have kind of talked more and fleshed this out a little bit, I think there's like three primary.
Yeah, we got a few here.
So that was one of the things that you learned, because my initial kind of thought was like, look, man, we could go nuts with like
and
all
I
the
have
different angles that we could look at, but in my mind there's kind of three primary categories where this could be implemented in a franchise organization. So there's the franchisor to franchisee communication. And that can go both ways, right? That's franchisees also communicating back to the franchisor. There's peer-to-peer, right? So franchisee to franchisee. And then you could, even expand on that and have, franchisees, team members communicating with other team members of other franchisees, learning from each other.
Sure.
I think there's a few different ways you could kind of do some subsets off of that. But then there's the franchisee to candidate facing, right? So that's for brands that are, recruiting new franchisees and trying to, educate a prospective franchise owner about the brand and the business. So with those, you could kind of go nuts. But like one of the things you've learned in all of your experience, and I think you had to kind of get me to pump the brakes
a little bit.
Was, look, man, we need to just have some pre-packaged shows essentially that, obviously we'll customize them and tailor them to each individual brand that we work with based on where that brand is at and kind of what their needs are. But, just general conceptual show packages, right? So that, we're not having to reinvent the wheel every single time. So, what are some of those ideas that,
to your point, and I'll kind of go into them believe me, and like you said, I've gone down that road, right? So I've been doing this for a long time. So, there was this, everything's going to be bespoke. What do you need? And that makes a lot of sense when somebody has a very specific objective. You can develop a show around it. But one of the things I've learned is to get people, especially these days, because it is becoming more prevalent and people are doing it, and people do think, well, we can do it ourselves. And they don't realize everything that goes into a podcast. It's like, I always say to people, I'm like, oh, really? You think you can do it? I'm like, go ahead, do it yourself. Get these 7 people that you have to have lined up and ready to go, and make sure nobody drops
for 6 months from now to check in with them and see why they still haven't.
No one can drop the ball
yet. Yeah.
So that's why I always say the prepackaged shows. Once you know this world, way better than I do and better than a lot of people. It's once you know the hot buttons, those hot buttons are pretty much the same across
universal.
Across the entire franchise universe. So if you create the right show, it's great for companies to say, all right, well, you know what? We can just try this. So it's a really nice way to dip your toe into the podcast water and pilot it and see how it works. And then you can get into, oh, well, let's do something a little more customized. Hey, what about this? And you start talking about it. But I wanted to create, based on the things you told me, what are these 3 shows? And once again, they're podcasts. So these have to be, they got to be named the right way, and they have to have the right people on them and what have you. So to the point, I'll just kind of get into the 3 of them and talk about. I'll go through each one, and then you jump in after each one.
We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute. But if you've been considering business ownership, if If you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode.
The first one was this idea or this name of Secret of My Success. And to me, I always call these, and I do these with a lot of companies, but it is right on for for a franchise team where,
Spot on.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically everybody has a master class inside of them. Everybody has that principle that has helped them get to where they are. Sometimes they have more than one, but if you take that, I always call these pod classes.
Yeah.
You take that one principle, that one lesson, that one thing that they teach everyone, that they always are they talk to people about that. If they were going to write an article, for one of these, for a business magazine or a franchise trade magazine, this is what it would be about. That idea, that taking that and turning it into a podcast and then releasing that to the rest of the franchise system.
Yep.
That's a home run, and that's an easy one. And I've done that for a lot of different companies, but people love that. People love to be on those shows, and people love that peer-to-peer learning.
They do, and I think most franchisors miss the boat here where they're all going to acknowledge peer-to-peer communication is great, and franchisees being able to share ideas and best practices with each other is great. But I don't think it gets disseminated very well. I think what ends up happening a lot of times is, any of the forums that everyone's kind of coming together. Like I'll use the franchise my wife and I own as an example. Like we have I think they do it bi-weekly now. So every other week they call it a town hall, right? So all the franchisees are there.
That's original too. That's an original name.
Right. Yeah. At least it didn't start with like Fran
Hall.
Yeah. But it's for the most part corporate, the franchisor talking to the franchisees, updates, and if that thing goes an hour, right, maybe every now and then they'll like tap a franchisee that, has been trying something new or, just had a big win in some area of the business, and they get 10 or 15 minutes to come on and kind of talk about it. But it's like, look, if you don't attend that meeting, right, and let's just say you heard like, oh, so-and-so had a great nugget that they shared. You're not like, the Zoom calls are recorded and they get posted somewhere, but to go back and find that and skip through it to find the nugget, we have power teams, and I know most franchise systems are similar, right? You get groups of franchisees together in these little like, mastermind type groups, and they share ideas and they learn from each other, but they end up becoming very siloed, right? Often what happens is your top producing franchisees, they all kind of group together and they're in the little club together, and you got brand new owners that are in their first year of business and they're all together, and you're not getting a whole lot of cross communication across the whole system of franchisees. So this idea where whether it's 5, 6, 7, 10 franchisees that all have something unique that they can come and teach their masterclass on, right? And you've got it easy to access, easy to listen to, easy to
evergreen.
Search.
It lasts for, as long as it's relevant, in most cases it will be. You also make a good point when you bring up these power teams. And this was the problem that I found with a lot of learning and development, a lot of internal comms at larger companies. And I've convinced them to kind of go a different way, which is really refreshing. A lot of companies, it's the senior people talking down. Well, they know everything.
Yep.
And I'm doing one right now with a company where the whole idea of it is, and a lot of companies say, give everybody a voice. And it's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. Because people who are junior are, first of all, they're afraid to talk because the minute they do and they talk about, they say something, it somehow bites them in the ass down the road. So they're
Totally.
very,
Yeah.
that safety is
Totally.
not really there. But there are companies where, you'd be very surprised. And what we do is it's across the company. And the company's name starts with a K, so we call it Gen K, right? So that's the name instead of secret of my success. But everybody in the organization who wants to come on, from the most junior to the most senior, can teach a lesson. And you would be shocked at how people who are new to the organization, even people new to the workforce, man, they have some lessons that, they could teach the old dog some new tricks. So it works that kind of up and down, which is really important. And this is a great way to do it.
In franchising too, right? Like
100%.
It's not just the most tenured franchisees that are going to be the ones that can teach the most. I mean,
they might think they are.
They think so. Yeah. They're always going to think that, but I hear on a regular basis, right? Cause I'm always on webinars and different, meetings where we're getting updates from the franchise brands that I work with. Cause they're all trying to get me and other franchise consultants. They want to stay top of mind with us because we're working with all these people out there that, are wanting to buy the right franchise. And so they want to give us good updates and keep us excited about their brand so that we'll refer prospective franchisees to them. And we're hearing all the time, on a regular basis, hey, so-and-so, new franchisee 6 months into business, just broke this record, or, the rookie of the year from this past year just, had an all-time high of, record revenue in their first year of business. I mean, stuff like that. And so I think in a lot of cases, yes, someone newer to the system can still come in and teach a master class.
100%. Yeah.
So much of this too, man, like I've seen countless franchise organizations at this point. They all have a bell curve, right? They all have a top 20%, a bottom 20%, and everything in between. And mindset is such a big piece of this, right? Like that top 20% of the franchisees in any organization, I don't care what the business is, their mindset is better, stronger, more positive, more growth mindset than the rest of the system, especially that bottom 20%. And so if you can, really find ways to, through your franchisees that are going out there and doing the business the right way, they have the right type of mindset, even if that catches on with just 2%, 5%, 10% of the franchisee base that's got room to get better, like that's a win.
And Wes, the other part of this, even though we're talking about private and internal, some of this information, you can use it for thought leadership. You can put it out there. Totally. And even when we do talk about, candidate experience and look, you don't have to release this to candidates, or you could show them clips, but it's the message. It is the message of, hey, listen, we listen to everyone. This proves it. This isn't just preaching all the voices. This is practicing it. And I think that's another thing that when people hear it, they look at it and go, well, that's a pretty collaborative environment. I want to be a part of that. And they're actually going to listen to me. It's not going to be just me sitting there having to listen to the people that have been doing this for X amount of years. Yeah,
totally. It's a way to really build and strengthen your culture, right?
Yes.
Within the brand, franchisee to franchisee. That's so important. But then, you can repurpose a lot of this that we're talking about right now.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be all of it, right? Because
you keep the confidential stuff confidential.
Yeah, a big benefit of the internal format is that it can be a little more raw. It can be, you don't have to worry about outsiders listening to it, right? So you can talk numbers, you can talk challenges,
right?
You can
Exactly.
Talk, weak areas that we're working to improve, but you can still repurpose a fair amount of that to show prospective franchisees. And I think more than anything, to your point, it's just like, hey, this is something that we do. So this is part of our culture, right? So if you decide to become a franchisee with us, this is something that you're going to benefit from. You don't get to see it all right now, but here's a little glimpse. Here's a little taste.
That's right.
What our franchisees get on a, regular basis from their peers to help them learn and grow and get better in their business. You could take a lot of this too and use it to, create or expand upon SOPs, right? Build out your own boarding. Like so much of what franchisors need to do and do well is, I mean, have a playbook, right? I mean, that's a big part of what you're buying when you buy a franchise is a
Yeah.
playbook. So, you don't want that thing to be flimsy and full of fluff. Like you want there to be some
Yeah.
real meat to it. And so like we're working on one of the first projects we're working on, is an example where it's like, yeah, once this episode and this series is done, this brand is going to be able to take that, turn it into
a library,
a 25 to 50 page playbook.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that helped one franchisee add, multiple 6 figures of revenue to their top line in like a year. Right. So now you can go turn that into a playbook. All your franchisees that are already open and operating, take the playbook, run with it, but also build it into your onboarding, right? So now as you have new franchisees coming in, part of their onboarding, part of what they're doing before they even come to training is identifying some of these same types of opportunities that are outlined in this, and that's just one episode of the whole series that we're doing.
People have different lessons. I'm sure your wife has 5. So do 5 shows.
She would call it 10. I would say 3, maybe 4.
So there you go. Let's split the difference. 6.
Yeah, but and that's just the first show, right?
You want me to? I'll go into the next one. The next one that we had talked about was this idea. We called it Finders Keepers, and this is a talent acquisition and talent retention.
We'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode.
So this is great for, when you brought this up, I was like, God, this isn't just something franchisees struggle with. This is, a lot of companies struggle with this as well. And I've done different versions of this for companies too, which is, when it comes to, first finding talent and then interviewing them and then retaining them and keeping them interested. There's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of people, there are people who do that well. And I'm sure at a large company, you have the hiring managers and the recruiting man. These people know how to interview. Where a lot of things fall down is when they hand it off to the manager of that team, and that person doesn't. Their job's not to interview every day. They ruin it. They're the ones who they're not prepared for the interview, and the people are looking at them going, I don't want to work for you. But right. inside of a franchise system, there have got to be people who are the stars, if you will, of how did you find these people? How do you keep them excited and motivated and engaged? And by the way, it doesn't just have to be a show like this. Is definitely one where you want to have the best practices of your people, but there are plenty of outside people as well who, there are, HR and recruiting and unbelievable managers at other companies. There's authors, there's a lot of research on this. Those people can be interviewed too. So this is a really, I think, important one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's the hardest part of any business, I've come to believe. And across all the different franchises that I work with, literally we're talking everything from like crime scene cleanup, dog and pet waste pickup and removal, high-end beauty and fashion, fitness, senior care. Like it doesn't matter what type of business we're talking about. The hardest part of it for these franchisees is finding and keeping talented people. And franchisors know this, right? So franchisors know, hey, whatever we can do to help support our franchisees in these efforts, is, time and resources well spent. But franchisors also know, like, it's not their job to go and make these hires and build these teams for their franchisees. And if you really zoom out, like, companies franchise because they need that local ownership piece, in the market, right? If the franchisor could just as easily, from afar, hire a bunch of people and train them up and say, hey, you're going to operate our Wilmington, North Carolina market, without having to go to the links of franchising their business, like a lot of companies,
they would just do it.
Right. But it's, having someone local in the market that owns it, that can really be, that leader that's got ownership, right? So there's that incentive, that motivation. So it's something that I think every franchise out there struggles with. And within, I already said it, every franchise organization has a bell curve, right? So mindset and leadership skills, those are the two biggest things that, I don't care what business we're talking about, separates the top performers from everyone else. So again, if you can disseminate some of these best practices across your whole franchise network, like, look at the people that have, the best track record with building high performing teams within your organization, get them up there to teach about it. Right. And that's going to land a hell of a lot better with the franchisee that's struggling than having, like, your director of HR or your director of operations get up there again and basically, like, kind of preach at them as to what they're not doing right when it comes.
Well, sometimes the smallest thing too is the thing that keeps people excited. Yeah. And somebody could be doing something that is so simple, but it's not, it's not something that the corporate person is thinking about because they're not out there doing it. And the franchisee in one area might say, you know what I do? And the reason why I'm keeping people for so long is because I do this. And people will look at it and go, that's it? You might find the simplest thing. Yeah. It could be, that kind of silver bullet, if you will.
Yeah. So this finders keepers one I love. And to your point, it doesn't have to, for any of these, it doesn't have to be exclusively people on the inside. Right. And I think in a lot of ways, like, why does anyone go out and hire a coach, right? Having that third,
100%
kind of third party analysis and they're not coming in with any bias or anything like that. There's a lot of value in that. And that's definitely part of the value that, we will be able to bring to our clients, is helping to, curate some of that outside.
And think about the books. Like, think about all the books that are out there on HR, and some of them are crap and some of them are really interesting. Yeah. And when people talk about, well, we can get that author to come on this show and talk about, that would be typically the fireside chat, or I'm sorry, the Fran-aside chat, whatever people want to call it, right? Right. Like at an organization. But the that would be the, hey, let's do at our sales conference, we're bringing in so-and-so to talk about this. Yeah. Well, you could do it on a podcast now.
Totally. Yeah. Probably for a fraction.
Oh, of the cost, you're not kidding.
To bring in
for a lot cheaper.
It's going to do workshops and the whole shebang.
Well, they'll do it cheap because they think they're coming to the sales meeting. So you can.
That's right. Well, yeah, exactly. And then depending on how the podcast goes,
that's maybe exactly. It's a great way to vet them
to come to your annual conference. But yeah, man, I think there's. Well, let's go into the third
last one. So the last one, and this is one I love and I have a lot of heart for, it's the frequently asked questions unplugged. Frequently asked questions drive me crazy because so many people, first of all,
I wanted to call them Fran facts, FAQs,
right, which we could. The thing about frequently asked questions is when you document them and you have those answers, it saves you a lot of time. We all know that. And I'm sure a lot of, I look at this one as, I'm sure a lot of candidates ask the same questions. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe, this one could be public, but I see it more internally as what are the questions that a lot of franchisees are asking each other or asking the corporate. Also, what are candidates asking about the franchise? Now, the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, now let's write down the answer and we'll put it on our website or we'll put it on a document. And nobody fucking reads the frequently asked question. And even if they do, it's a little paragraph like this, and no one digs into, no one's asking, what's the follow? Oh, that's the answer. But what about, what's this? And every frequently asked question, you could probably double click on it 3 or 4 times. Easy. So this is a great way to take those frequently asked questions and turn them into a conversation. Yep. And like Big Heads Network, on bigheadsnetwork.com, our frequently asked questions is a podcast, and it better be, right? Because we're a podcast company, but that's where the idea came from, was it really does work. And there are some, I want to say, intangible benefits to it, which are, number one, now people are listening to management or leaders talk. They're hearing their voice. Mm-hmm. And that's what people want. They want to hear, it helps humanize. I guess that's a good way to put it. Humanize the people who are answering those questions. You get to hear them. You get to hear the kind of, that kind of brings to life the organization. It puts a voice on the organization. But not only that, it allows somebody to ask that question and then ask the follow-up, and then ask the follow-up. So whoever's interviewing them, say it's yourself or me, and we're asking them, we're not going to just go in and ask them that frequently asked question. We're going to ask it and turn it into a conversation that might go on for a few minutes, but people will still be engaged because they're looking at it going, oh, as they're listening, they're probably going, oh, you know what I hope they ask? The best interviewers are the ones who ask those follow-ups. Yeah, and this gives them an opportunity to do it.
It'll either be, I'm glad they asked that because that was the next question I had, or
I didn't think to ask that.
I wouldn't have thought to ask that necessarily, but I'm glad they did. And now
and this could be packaged in different ways. It could be, number one, it could be public for the whole company for sure. It could be a great one, like I said, internally, because I'm sure there's those frequently asked questions all the time. And then there's the one for candidates. And then once again, you could pull these things out and use them for thought leadership across different social sites or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, to market, there's all types of ways you could pull clips from any of these different show packages, use them to run ads to promote the franchise opportunity. And
they're fun to do. They're easy. These are the reason why we pick these is these are not hard shows to do. You can, and they're easy to try. So these are shows that you could look at it, right? Like the first client we're working with, we're saying, okay, well, we'll do one. We'll do one, literally one episode. And next thing you know, it'll be 5. And the next, but you can do those couple episodes and try them just to see. They can always
come back and add on to it too, as soon as there's something relevant. You know what I mean? And I think that's why, because when I first met you and started hearing about what you're doing and we started having some of these conversations, my first question or kind of pushback though was, I was like, well, why don't they just do it themselves? And you're like, they don't though. Yeah. You're like, that's valid question, but they don't. And I think part of the key thing here is that it's these kind of limited run, again, packages, right?
Huge.
It's daunting to think I'm going to start a podcast and it's just going to
go on in perpetuity and forever. Where am I going to find the time? How am I going to find the topics? See, but when you're working with corporations, and this is where the big learning that I had right out of the gate when I started, you can't budget for that. That's hard to budget for. I wanted to put guardrails on it just to budget for it. And we also were looking at, you're talking about big corporations where you have one objective one day and there's another objective and another objective. An innovation team might have 3 or 4 different objectives. Learning and development has, 20 different objectives. So you can look at it and say, well, we could tackle that objective in 3 or 5 episodes. We don't need to, that doesn't even warrant going on forever. Right. So, and it was easy to budget for. And that's where I think this makes this for franchisors and franchisees, it just makes it easy to do, easy to digest, understand, and say, let's just try it and pilot it.
Yeah. And then again, you can always easily come back and add on, but with us doing this with, especially, as the client list grows and grows, compared to a brand trying to figure out, okay, well, who on the team should handle this. Like most franchisors run very, very lean, right? Like one of the stats we hear, like we as franchise consultants here on a regular basis is, they like to share their ratio of support staff to franchisees, right? Because most franchisors run so lean. And so if you hear it's like, we got one support staff to every 10 franchisee, like that's a pretty strong ratio. All right. But I mean, you would probably be amazed at how some of the big brand names out there, 20 people that work on the on the franchisor side. I mean, so some of them are bigger, obviously, but the point is, it's like, okay, well, who on the team is going to handle
who's going to do it? Yeah.
Where are we going to do it? And what equipment? Like I had a conversation with an awesome lady at a brand that I work with not too long ago. And she had just kind of started on her own, like organically. The idea came up she's like an onboarding specialist. The idea came up for her to start interviewing some of their franchisees that had been ultra successful in year one. Right. Mm-hmm. But she was still like fumbling around trying to figure out equipment. And like, she sent me one of them to listen to, and conceptually it's great. Quality wise, audio quality, video quality, like none of that was great. So I think the turnkey aspect of it is going to be a huge value add. And I think the other piece, and this is for us to get right, but I think the other piece is making sure it's easy for whoever the target audience is. If it's franchisees, if it's candidates, make sure it's easy to find and easy to access. The other thing I love about this is like, I mean, I listen to tons of podcasts and audiobooks. Like I almost never watch TV. Never, really listen to music a whole lot. It's if I'm driving, working out, whatever, it's a podcast, it's a book. So if I'm a franchisee, give me that in the same way I'm used to consuming the 100%. Other stuff I consume. Yeah. Like if I can go on my Spotify app and get it, but only the target audience can get it, right? So private playlists on Spotify, YouTube, I mean, all of that. So, we can work with the brand. A lot of brands have their own internal platforms, but it's got to be easy to access, easy to find, easy to consume. So yeah, I'm super excited about this, man.
Me too, man. This is fun. I'm glad we did this.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it. Anything else that we should share for right now?
I mean, all I would say is it's worth a shot. It's not, this isn't going to break the bank. It's easy to do. And I will tell you, it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. And there's a big need for it, man. I can tell you there's a need for it. And, I think you and I together, especially are kind of in a unique position where we can come in and deliver a ton of value in a way that's not gonna break the bank for a brand's budget. But
I mean, I'll break the bank if they want. If they want, I mean,
we can. Yeah, we can.
But it's a good point. They are turnkey, and they really are these things that it's fascinating to look at the things you have been doing or the messages that you have and watch them be converted into a podcast. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But I appreciate, I'm glad we did this, my man. I really am.
Likewise, man. Looking forward to it. More to come. We'll do another update on Studio F Productions as things continue to go. But we've got a little bit of momentum and should be off to the races here real soon. And I promise the name, whatever it ends up being, I think Studio F Productions is it. But even if that changes, it will not have Fran in front of it.
Thank you. Good.
Promise you that.
All right, brother.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.